Prepare to text aimlessly on your cell phones, my friends. It's my review of Durarara. And this week's episode featured the grand introduction of the leader of the Toromaru biker gang, Rokujo Chikage. Rokujo is pretty frigging awesome. Next to Shizuo, he's probably one of the toughest bastards in all of Ikebukuro, and he even has a battle with him this week, which is mostly off-screen and mostly implied, and safe to say Shizuo does kick his ass, but this guy didn't go down until about 5 punches, and that really speaks a lot for him, and this guy's really tough himself. I really loved his introduction, where he was all bandaged up and hanging out with his female entourage, when he stopped this one robber by slamming his foot right into his face, causing blood to cover the entire pavement, and then he continued to break both of his legs in front of a huge crowd, and he really seemed to like doing it too. This guy's pretty insane, and I really love his introduction because it's a really nice start to the next arc of this series. I especially love the scene at the end of the episode when he's getting his entire gang all pumped up. There's going to be a big biker gang war, and it's going to be awesome. Rokujo didn't get the slip on Shizuo, but actually it was this little girl who did. There's this brand new character who was introduced in this week's episode, who's this cute little girl who almost looks like a chibi-ized version of Henri, and she has this picture of Shizuo, and he goes outside to meet her and see really what's up, and all she says is die, pulls out a taser, and ends up tasing him, and everybody around is watching this. He ends up knocking her over, and as Tom said, either way you look at it, this does not look good. So they decide to make a quick escape, and you can even see that she's wrapped around him the entire time. It is worth mentioning that Shizuo actually did seem like he respected Rokujo a little bit, because he did bring him to Celti and Shinra's. There's also a very small scene where Mikado is talking to Masaomi, and he's telling him to stay away from the dollars, something dark and ominous is coming, and that might actually tie into what's happening at the very end of this week's episode, where Celti looks like she's also looking for this little girl, and then suddenly this blonde biker comes out of nowhere, sets up some razor wire, and she ends up getting decapitated. And this is all after this one scene where she meets up with those gang members, and that one guy gets real freaked out when he sees Celti take off her helmet, and then he ends up getting the shit knocked out of him. There was just a lot of real funny bits like that in this week's episode. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Durarara? The next arc looks like it's going to be a little more exciting than the first, if only for the fact that they're upping the ante a little bit with how things are escalating so much. Just the fact that they brought in Rokujo Chikage, I think he's a really interesting character, and I'd really love to see a rematch with him and Shizuo. You know, we didn't really get to see their fight, and I just love to see that, honestly. I just think that would be funny to see. I really like how the episode actually opened up, too, with Izaya. I thought that was really great. His pompous asshole self. He's just a really fun character to watch. And they use him sparingly, which I think is very smart. Every single time he's on screen, he certainly leaves an impact. But this week's episode, really, I think the most important thing is this new girl character. Because Celti's looking for her, she's looking for Shizuo, and that final scene at the end was just really strange with that biker coming out of nowhere. Just really ominous and pretty well animated, too. That was definitely one of the big highlights of this week's episode. But I think my favorite scene was when Rokujo was stopping the robber. That was just so over the top and ridiculous, especially when he decided to just jump up and break his legs Bruce Lee style. That was pretty intense. On the technical side of things, the animation, the artwork, the music, the voice acting, it's very distinctly Durarara. This show is something that has its own style, and it definitely comes through in this week's episode. So this was a really nice start to a brand new arc of the series. I'm really excited for it, and I thought this was a pretty nice standout episode. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. I don't think it was a perfect episode. I think it was a little slow in the beginning. However, if you have been following the series, I highly recommend checking out this episode. It was pretty damn good. Thank you guys for watching the review. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. And before you guys leave, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Durarara. And make sure to subscribe to the channel. Check us out on Facebook and on Twitter.